My parents made secret copies of my condo keys and moved my sister in while I was at work, so I had them arrested. The phone call came Tuesday evening. Mom's voice was syrupy sweet, the tone that meant she wanted something I wouldn't give. It's about Bianca. She needs a place to stay. My stomach dropped. My younger sister had been dumped and needed rescuing. Again, she can't stay with me. We both remember what happened last time. Last time was a 2-month tornado. She treated my home like a hotel and me like the maid. Friends over until 3 a.m., my makeup used and left open, work clothes borrowed and returned ruined. You have a 2-bedroom condo all to yourself, Dad chimed in. All that extra space. They never saw my success as earned through years of eating instant noodles and working multiple jobs. They saw it as surplus, a community resource. It's not extra space. It's my space. The answer is no. I hung up, thinking my firmness would be enough. 2 days later, I came home to find my key wouldn't turn. The door was already unlocked. Adrenaline shot through me. The air was thick with Bianca's perfume. My living room was chaos. Furniture moved, her magazines everywhere, my sister humming as she unpacked. My parents were there too. Mom folding clothes, Dad assembling furniture. They looked up with triumphant smiles. There you are, honey, Mom said. We knew you'd come around when you saw how much Bianca needed this. Her clothes hung in my office closet next to my work blazers. Her toiletries colonized my bathroom counter. How did you get in? Dad sighed. We kept the spare you gave us for emergencies. This wasn't an emergency. Mom delivered the final blow. We had copies made for Bianca. She's family and this is happening. They'd forged my signature on building forms to list Bianca as an authorized resident. Something inside me broke. The last thread of needing their approval snapped. You have 10 minutes to pack everything and get out. Dad laughed. You wouldn't call the cops on your own family. Watch me. I dialed 911. I'd like to report a break-in. 3 intruders entered illegally and are refusing to leave. Panic was instant. Mom frantically throwing clothes into suitcases, Bianca standing with her mouth open. When officers arrived, they listened to Mom's tearful explanation about family misunderstandings and Dad's bluster about me being overly emotional. I spoke calmly, showed my mortgage documents, explained they'd used illegally copied keys without permission. This is her property. She's asked you to leave. Police escorted them out like criminals. That night, I hired an emergency locksmith for $400 and installed security cameras. The counterattack began with tearful voicemails from Mom about my cruelty and texts from Dad about my selfishness. Bianca took her drama public with passive-aggressive posts. 2 days later, my cameras caught Bianca at my door with a locksmith, claiming to be my roommate. I spoke through the doorbell. I am the sole owner. This woman is a trespasser with a police report from 2 days ago. The locksmith ran. Bianca screamed until neighbors threatened to call security. They escalated further. Mom called my boss claiming I was having a mental health crisis. They contacted my landlord with the same lie. Then came identity theft. Credit card applications filed in my name using information Bianca got from my office. I filed for restraining orders against all 3. At the hearing, they painted me as unstable. Bianca wept about promises broken. Then my lawyer presented evidence. Ring footage of Bianca with the locksmith, forged forms, screenshots of manipulative posts, HR documentation, credit fraud alerts. But I'd saved the most damning piece. My lawyer found James, Bianca's ex from 2 years ago. He testified about Bianca harassing him after their breakup, then trying to break into his house. The next day, James said, her father offered me $5,000 to not press charges and sign an NDA. My lawyer displayed the signed agreement and check on screen. The judge granted maximum restraining orders immediately. But Bianca made one final error. At 3 a.m., the night before the hearing, my alarm went off. I watched a figure in black use a crowbar to pry open my bedroom window. It was Bianca, all recorded. 3 months later, she was found guilty of attempted burglary and sentenced to 30 days in jail, 2 years probation, 200 hours community service, and full restitution. I sold the condo. I live in a secure building now with a doorman. Last week, Bianca's first restitution check arrived. Staring at her name, I felt quiet finality. This chapter was over. I put the check next to my plane ticket to Italy. The greatest inheritance my parents gave me wasn't money, but resilience. I'm no longer their dependable daughter. I'm the architect of my own life.
My dad thought I'd just hand over my inheritance, but when I refused, he called a family meeting and brought lawyers to intimidate me into giving it up. The inheritance was from my grandmother, Dad's mother, who'd specifically left everything to me. Not him, not my siblings, just me. $847,000 in the beach house in Maine, where I'd spent every summer as a kid, learning to paint while she told stories about surviving the Depression. You were always special to her, Dad said, his voice dripping with false warmth as 3 lawyers in identical gray suits arranged documents across our dining table. But she wasn't in her right mind. Dementia. You know, Grandma had been sharp until the day she died. She'd called me 2 weeks before, reciting my social security number from memory just to prove her mind was intact. Your father will try to take it, she'd warned. Don't let him. The lead lawyer, a woman with predatory eyes, slid a paper toward me. This simply transfers the assets to their rightful place. The family trust your father manages. I didn't touch it. The will was clear, I said. Dad's mask slipped for a second. Linnea, be reasonable. You're 23. You'll blow through it on avocado toast and yoga retreats. That's when I noticed my Uncle Cameron in the corner, recording everything on his phone. My sister Thea sat frozen, gripping her coffee mug like a lifeline. Mom stared at her hands. Sign it, Dad commanded, or I'll contest the will. Drag this through court for years. You know I have the resources. The lawyers nodded in unison like trained seals. What Dad didn't know was that I'd been recording too, not just today, but for months. Every threat, every manipulation, every time he'd stolen from Grandma's accounts while she was alive. I had bank statements, forged signatures, emails where he discussed handling her estate before she was even sick. Actually, I said, pulling out my laptop, let's discuss what Grandma knew about your embezzlement. The room went silent. I opened the first file, security footage from Grandma's house showing Dad removing paintings, jewelry, and cash while she was at dialysis. Then the forensic accountant's report I'd commissioned showing $400,000 missing over 5 years. The lead lawyer's face changed. We weren't aware of any criminal activity. There isn't any. Dad snarled. She's bluffing. I played an audio recording. Grandma's voice, clear and strong. I'm removing my son from my will due to his repeated theft. Everything goes to Linnea, who has shown me what real family means. The lawyers began packing their briefcases. This meeting is over, the lead lawyer announced. Mr. Holt, you failed to disclose relevant information. We're terminating our representation effective immediately. Dad lunged across the table, grabbing for my laptop. Uncle Cameron finally spoke. Touch her, and I'm calling the police. I've been documenting your fraud for years, waiting for Linnea to be ready. I looked at Cameron, stunned. Grandma asked me to protect you, he said simply. She knew what kind of man my brother was. Dad stood there, calculating. Then he smiled. That same smile from when he'd convinced investors to pour money into his failed ventures. Fine, keep it. But you're dead to me. I've been dead to you since I was born female instead of the son you wanted, I replied. Grandma saw that. He stormed out. The lawyers followed. Mom finally looked up. I'm leaving him, she whispered. Grandma left me something too. Evidence of his affairs. I was waiting to see if you'd cave. Thea laughed. Actually laughed. The old lady planned everything, didn't she? I opened Grandma's final letter. The one her lawyer gave me that morning. My darling girl. By now your father has shown his true colors. The money is yours, but the real inheritance is freedom from his control. Use it wisely. Build the life we dreamed about during those summer painting sessions. And remember, the best revenge against a narcissist is living well without them. P.S. Check the beach house basement. I left something special. 2 weeks later, I stood in that basement surrounded by Grandma's hidden art collection, Monets, Picassos, pieces worth millions she'd bought cheap in the 1960s and never told anyone about. Dad had been right about one thing. Grandma did have favorites. She just had excellent taste in choosing them.
I stood up during my dad's funeral and told his wife to shut up. My dad's new wife, Normani, is 28. I'm 32. Mom died exactly 1 year ago, and Dad met Normani on some cruise to Mexico like 4 months later. She calls me sweetie at family dinners like she's some wise elder who's been around forever. She moved into our childhood home 3 months after meeting him. Dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in August. The doctor said 6 months, maybe 8 if we were lucky. Dad took it like he took everything else, quietly, with this small nod like he was accepting a dinner reservation. Normani's first response was asking if we should still go ahead with their anniversary trip to Cabo. I'm not even joking. The man just found out he's dying, and she's worried about her tan lines. She actually pulled up the resort website on her phone while we were still in the oncologist's office. The first chemo session, she showed up 45 minutes because she had a nail appointment she couldn't reschedule. My sister and I had been there since 6 in the morning. Normani walked in with her fresh acrylics, took one look at Dad throwing up into a bucket, and said she needed some air. She spent the rest of the session in the hospital cafeteria FaceTiming her friends. By October, Dad couldn't walk without help. Normani hired a nurse, which sounds nice until you realize she did it so she wouldn't have to touch him. She literally told me, I can't handle all the gross stuff. That's not what I signed up for. Meanwhile, she was still posting Instagram stories from her morning yoga classes and wine nights with the girls. November was when things got really bad. Dad needed round-the-clock care. We set up a schedule. My siblings and I would rotate nights. Normani said she'd take Mondays and Thursdays. First Monday, she called me at midnight saying she had a migraine and could I cover. Thursday, her friend was having a crisis. The next Monday, food poisoning. After 3 weeks of this, we stopped putting her on the schedule. Then came the money stuff. While Dad was literally on his deathbed, barely conscious, Normani was in his office going through financial documents. She called his lawyer twice asking about the will. She tried to get power of attorney. When the lawyer told her that went to me as the oldest child, she actually asked Dad, who could barely speak, if he wanted to change it. The last week was the worst. Dad was in hospice and we knew it was close. We were all there every day, taking shifts so someone was always with him. Normani would show up for maybe an hour. Usually when she knew other people would be there, she'd cry dramatically, take a few selfies looking sad, then leave because it was too hard for her. 2 days before he died, she asked me when I thought we'd be done with all this stuff because she had a girls' trip to Miami planned and didn't want to miss it. I told her to go. Seriously, just go. Dad died that Thursday morning at 6:47. He waited until all 3 of us kids were there, holding his hands. She didn't even answer her phone when we called. When she finally came back from her trip, I pulled her aside. Maybe I'd misread everything. Normani, I know this has been hard. She cut me off. Don't act like you care. Now I have to deal with all this funeral stuff. Miami was ruined because you kept calling. I stared at her. Dad just died. She rolled her eyes. Someone has to be practical. At least I'll get the house. Already called a realtor. That's when I knew she felt nothing. You know what, Normani? You're right. You will deal with the funeral. She smirked. Finally, some respect. I knew what I had to do. The funeral was packed. Normani sat in the front row wearing a black veil like she was Jackie Kennedy. When it came time for family remarks, she actually got up to speak. Started talking about their beautiful love story and how Dad was her soulmate. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up right in the middle of her speech. Shut up, Normani. The whole church went silent. She tried to keep talking, but I walked up to the podium. You weren't his soulmate. You were his midlife crisis who couldn't even be bothered to show up while he was dying. I turned to everyone. This woman spent his last days shopping for her next husband on dating apps. She tried to change his will while he was on morphine. Normani's face went white. How dare you? You're not his widow. You're not our family. You're just someone who married a dying man for his money. And guess what? Dad changed his will 3 weeks ago. You get nothing. The lawyer stood up from the third row and nodded. Normani ran out sobbing real tears this time. I sat back down and finally let myself cry for Dad. I gave my coworker exactly what she wanted, and it destroyed her entire career. Heather was my coworker and our boss Douglas's niece. She had this bubbly, confident personality that made everyone instantly trust her. The kind of person who could walk into any room and immediately make you believe whatever she was saying. She was charismatic, always smiling, always volunteering for projects. Everyone at our small marketing firm loved her. She seemed so helpful and eager, but I knew the truth. Heather didn't do any actual work. She just took credit for mine, every single time. And because she was family and so convincing, Douglas always believed her over me. 6 months of watching Heather get bonuses for my work while I documented everything. My jaw hurt from clenching it during meetings. I'd go home and cry from being invisible. Then Douglas called called an emergency meeting. We landed a major retail client. I need both of you to prepare presentations. We'll review them before the pitch. My hands started shaking. This was my chance to expose her. I knew what Heather would do because she'd never created anything original. So I made 2 presentations. The real one stayed hidden on my laptop. The fake one I filled with lies. Wrong statistics that sounded right. Fake quotes. Contradicting data buried in charts. I uploaded it to our shared drive late that night. I barely slept. The next morning, Heather downloaded it without changing a word. She took the bait. When Douglas called us in to review, my palms were sweating. Heather went first with my fake presentation. She smiled and gestured like she'd spent weeks on this. Douglas nodded along. Then he turned to me. Your turn. I clicked around and frowned. Sorry, my file's corrupted. Douglas sighed like I was wasting his time. Fix it before the pitch. He turned to Heather. You're presenting. Excellent work. She gave me this smug smile that said she'd won again. My blood boiled. I wanted to scream, but I kept quiet. Let her think she won. The day of the pitch came. The conference room felt ice cold. 3 executives from the retail company sat across from us. Douglas introduced Heather with pride. Heather's going to show you why we're the right choice. Heather connected her laptop and launched into my fake presentation. She talked about engagement metrics like she'd created every slide. The executives took notes. Douglas beamed. My heart hammered. Then one executive raised his hand. Hold on. Go back to that chart. Heather smiled and clicked back. He squinted at the screen. These numbers are mathematically impossible. Engagement dropped, but conversion increased by the exact same percentage. Heather's face rose. Her smile stayed, but her eyes went wide. Another executive leaned forward. And this quote you attributed to our CEO? He never said that. I'm his chief of staff. Douglas went pale. He started reading the slides. His expression shifted from confusion to horror. Heather, explain the methodology here. She couldn't. Her mouth opened and closed. Nothing came out. The panic spread across her face. There must be a version error. Her voice was shaking. Douglas stood up. His chair scraped loud. Stop. Just stop the presentation. The room goes dead silent. Heather's looking directly at me with desperate eyes. She's begging me to save her. I stare back and don't move. My face is blank. Her hands tremble as she searches her laptop. Click, click, click. One executive checks his watch. Tears spill down Heather's cheeks. I didn't. Her voice breaks. I didn't create this presentation. Douglas closes his eyes. When he opens them, his face is pure fury. Then who did? My hand goes up slowly. Every eye turns to me. I made a presentation for this pitch. My voice comes out steady and calm. Would you like to see it? Douglas's body tenses. Show me. Now. I connect my laptop. The real presentation loads. I go through every slide. Accurate data. Real quotes. Solid strategy. The executives lean forward. When I finish, one speaks up. This is what we were hoping to see. Douglas asks the executives to step outside. The door closes. He turns on Heather. How long have you been stealing her work? His voice is ice cold. Heather sobs. Uncle Douglas, please. She can't even answer. He turns to me. There's shame in his eyes. Show me everything. I open my documentation folder. 6 months of files proving I created them. Douglas's face turns red as he scrolls through it. He stares at his niece with pure disgust. You made me look like a fool. Douglas called HR immediately. His voice was shaking with anger on the phone. Security escorted Heather out a couple hours later after they reviewed my documentation. She kept her head down the entire walkout. Her face was red and puffy. I presented the real pitch to the executives. We got the client. Douglas promoted me to Heather's position with her salary that same day. Heather texted me that night. You're a snake. You destroyed my career on purpose. I deleted it without reading the rest. I felt
What's the worst thing that happened at a wedding you attended? I was the maid of honor at my best friend Mia's wedding when her future mother-in-law Jennifer stood up during the ceremony and announced she had something important to say. The entire church went silent. Mia's face went white. Jennifer walked to the front with this sick smile on her face and pulled out her phone. Before my son makes the biggest mistake of his life, everyone needs to see what kind of woman he's really marrying. She started playing a video on her phone, volume turned all the way up. It was Mia in a hotel room with another man in an inappropriate situation. The audio was crystal clear. Mia was sobbing, shaking her head, mouthing, "That's not me," to her fiancé Johnny. But the woman in the video looked exactly like her. Johnny's face went from confusion to rage in seconds. Is this real, Mia? Tell me this isn't real. Mia was hyperventilating, trying to speak, but nothing was coming out. Half the wedding guests were recording this with their phones. Her parents looked devastated. Jennifer was practically glowing with satisfaction. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago because I knew something was wrong with this girl. Johnny deserves better than a cheating woman. The church erupted in gasps and murmurs. Mia's grandmother had to be helped to her seat. That's when I noticed something. The timestamp on the video said last Tuesday, but I knew for a fact Mia was with me at my cousin's funeral in Portland last Tuesday. We drove there together and stayed in the same hotel room. I grabbed Jennifer's phone and looked closer. The woman in the video had a butterfly tattoo on her shoulder blade. Mia doesn't have any tattoos. I've known her since we were 12, and I've seen her in bathing suits hundreds of times. This video is fake, I announced loudly. Mia was with me in Portland when this was supposedly filmed, and she doesn't have that tattoo. But Jennifer snatched her phone back and started screaming about how I was just covering for my trashy friend. The private investigator was there in the back row. Jennifer called him up to verify his evidence. This greasy guy in a cheap suit walked up front and started explaining how he'd followed Mia to the hotel. But when I asked him which hotel, he said the Marriott downtown. The problem? There is no Marriott downtown in our city. There never has been. I pulled up Google Maps on my phone and showed everyone. The guy started backtracking, saying he meant the Hilton, but then couldn't remember which street it was on. Mia finally found her voice. Jennifer, you paid someone to create fake compromising content of me using AI. That's not just illegal, it's sick. She turned to Johnny, who was just standing there in shock. I have never cheated on you. I have never even been to whatever hotel that video claims to show. Jennifer started screaming that we were all lying, that the investigator was legitimate, but the guy was already trying to sneak out the back of the church. Johnny's dad stopped him and demanded to see his PI license. Turns out he didn't have one. He was just some random guy Jennifer found on Craigslist who makes deepfake videos meant to harm reputations. The truth came out piece by piece. Jennifer had been planning this for months because she hated Mia and wanted to destroy the wedding. She'd paid this creep $2,000 to create a convincing fake video using photos from Mia's social media. She'd even coached him on details about our city to make his story believable, but he'd screwed up the hotel name. Johnny was horrified. He turned to his mother and said, "You tried to destroy the woman I love with fabricated content. You are never speaking to my wife or our future children ever again." Jennifer started crying and claiming she was just trying to protect him, but it was too late. The wedding continued, but Jennifer was escorted out by Johnny's brothers. The
The fake investigator was arrested for fraud and creating fake videos without permission. Mia and Johnny are still married 3 years later, and Jennifer has never met her grandchildren. But the worst part? Some of the wedding guests still believe the video was real, even though it was proven fake in front of everyone. They whisper about Mia at family gatherings and treat her like she's damaged goods. Truth doesn't matter when people want to believe the worst about someone. Jennifer spent 6 months in jail and had to pay $50,000 in damages for the deepfake fabricated content. But she still tells people that Mia is a cheater, and I helped cover it up. Some lies never die, no matter how thoroughly they're debunked.
My roommate said she wanted me to stay away from her friends. She wasn't laughing when she discovered why they hung out with her. I've been living with Gia for 3 years. Last month, she stormed into my room yelling at me. I just got off FaceTime with my sister and she made me realize something. You're always stealing my friends. Those are my people, but you always make everything about you. I was half asleep watching Netflix and confused. What? From now on, we need separate friend groups. No more showing up to the same parties. No more group chats together. I didn't know whether to laugh or what. Gia, we share literally all the same friends. You can't just call dibs on people. She rolled her eyes so hard I worried they'd get stuck. We'll have them pick. They'll obviously pick me over you. I was trying real hard not to laugh. I went to college with our friend Tori. Our friend Robbie is literally my coworker, but she looked so confident in her delusion. Fine, whatever. But I had a feeling this wouldn't go how she expected. She immediately announced to everyone that she was reclaiming her friend group, like it was some kind of revolution. Here's what Gia doesn't realize about herself. She's a terrible friend. She shows up to Tori's events 2 hours late, then leaves early. She borrowed Robbie's expensive camping gear last summer and forgot to return it. She told everyone about Tori's pregnancy scare after 3 glasses of wine, when she swore she wouldn't say anything. She screenshots private conversations and shares them in other group chats for entertainment. When people vent to her, she immediately makes it about herself. The only reason people tolerate her is because I'm always doing damage control, apologizing for her lateness, returning borrowed items, changing subjects when she starts gossiping. Week 1, she announced in the group chat she stated we had an agreement and people should choose who to invite to their functions. Everyone hearted the message, confused but polite. Tori's birthday dinner happened. Tori sent me a handmade invitation for her 25th birthday dinner. Gia saw the invitation on the counter with my name attached and dramatically shut her door. She posted stories about fake friends showing true colors, then DM'd Tori's ex-boyfriend the restaurant location out of spite. Week 2, Robbie's Super Bowl party. He texted me directly, but I couldn't make it because of work. Gia saw Instagram stories and showed up with gas station chips demanding to know why she wasn't invited. Robbie said she still had his $300 tent. She claimed she'd look for it. Week 3, she organized a wine night, posted 15 times, tagged everyone. Nobody came. She blamed it on Mercury retrograde. Meanwhile, I'm feeling amazing about not needing to worry about covering her mistakes and apologizing for her. Tori actually thanked me, saying conversations were so much less toxic lately. The group chat reformed without Gia, and suddenly everyone's secrets stayed secret. People started opening up more, but month 2 was God handing Gia her karma on a silver platter. She'd send novels to Tori about hanging out. Tori would reply with a thumbs up. Gia commented on every Instagram story desperately. Obsessed with this. We should do this. Miss you, babe. Everyone ignored her. She started showing up places uninvited. Robbie's birthday drinks. Tori's baby shower she definitely wasn't invited to. Showing up with a card she obviously bought from the gas station 5 minutes before. By month 3, her birthday arrived. She planned a massive rooftop party and purposely didn't invite me but everyone else. Made a 40-person size event. Bought a photo booth rental, hired a DJ, and posted countdown stories daily, only for 5 people to show up. Her sister, parents, and 2 confused coworkers who left immediately. She kept posting stories pretending people were arriving soon. She knocked on my door at midnight, birthday tiara still on, holding a sheet cake for 40. Nobody came. These fakes couldn't even show up for my birthday. She ranted about each person's excuse. Tori claimed food poisoning. Robbie said family emergency then was at Topgolf. They're all just jealous of me. I couldn't take it anymore. Gia, do you remember how you met these people? I asked, her face scrunched up. That house party? Or, it clicked slowly. Your birthday, 2 years ago. She went pale. But I planned Tori's surprise party. I planned it. You showed up late and took photos for Instagram. But Robbie always invites me camping. I RSVP for both of us. You still have his tent. She pulled out her phone, frantically scrolling. Every thread started with her double texting. Every invite came through me. Every her friend was mine being polite. But I don't understand. Why don't I have friends? Everyone loves my energy. You tell people's private business for entertainment. You show up late and leave early. When's Tori's birthday? Silence. What's Robbie's girlfriend's name? More silence. She stared at her phone like it betrayed her. Can we go back to sharing friends? I'll be better. Actually show up on time. Stop gossiping. She looked so upset I actually felt bad. Give me your phone, I said. We listed everything she'd borrowed to return. Listed every apology she owes and confession she needs to make.
My son lost his hearing at age 6. Yesterday, he put on headphones and cried. The fever spiked to 104 while Liam was singing in the bathtub. 1 minute he was humming Daniel Tiger off-key. The next, his eyes rolled back and his body went rigid. I screamed for my wife Nora and we wrapped him in a towel, his skin burning against my chest. The ER doctor took one look at his stiff neck and said the word that stops parents' hearts, meningitis. What they didn't tell us in that moment, what we'd discover 6 days later when Liam came home, was that the bacteria had already destroyed his cochlear nerve, completely, irreversibly. At age 6, my son went from singing constantly to living in total silence, and the audiologist who delivered the diagnosis said there was nothing anyone could do. No hearing aids would help, no surgery could fix it. Liam was profoundly deaf and would be for the rest of his life. I watched him try to talk to his 4-year-old sister Penny the day after we got the diagnosis. Watched him yell, thinking he was speaking normally. Watched Penny's face crumple in confusion and fear at her brother's distorted voice. That's when something broke inside me. Not broke like giving up. Broke like the moment you realize you'll do anything, break any rule, spend any amount of time to fix what feels unfixable. Liam spiraled fast. Within 3 months, he'd stopped trying to talk, stopped playing with other kids, spent hours sitting in his room staring at nothing. His 2nd grade teacher called weekly with concerns. He wasn't participating, wasn't socializing, seemed depressed in ways that terrified her. We tried sign language, but Liam hated it, would throw fits and cover his eyes so he didn't have to watch us gesture. He wanted his old life life back and couldn't understand why we couldn't just make his ears work again. The worst part was watching him watch Penny. She'd dance around the living room to songs he couldn't hear, and he'd sit on the couch with tears running down his face, his small hands pressed against the speaker, trying to feel vibrations that meant nothing. Music had been his favorite thing. He'd sung constantly before the meningitis, made up songs about dinosaurs and trucks and whatever crossed his mind. Now all of that was gone, and the kid who remained was angry and scared and disappearing into himself. By his 7th birthday, Liam had essentially stopped smiling. That's when I started lying to my wife about where I was going 3 nights a week. I told Nora I'd joined a grief support group for parents of disabled children. That wasn't technically untrue. I had joined one, attended twice, then stopped going because sitting in a circle talking about feelings wasn't going to help Liam hear music again. Instead, I started showing up at the university engineering lab where my old colleague Dennis worked on auditory research. I'd been an audio engineer before kids, had specialized in acoustic design and signal processing before corporate work paid better. Dennis had access to equipment I couldn't afford and expertise I didn't have, and when I explained what I wanted to build, he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. A haptic vest that translates music into touch? That's not revolutionary. Those exist already, he said, pulling up commercial examples on his computer. They're crude, I told him. They're basic vibration. I want something that can translate complex musical information, that can let a deaf person experience a symphony with the same richness a hearing person does. Every instrument, every voice, every subtle dynamic change. I want my son to feel Beethoven the way Beethoven felt it when he was deaf. Dennis stared at me for a long moment, then said, "That's probably impossible." "Probably isn't definitely," I said. He smiled. "When can you start?" For 6 months, I spent 3 nights a week in that lab, while Nora thought I was at support group meetings. I'd come home at 10 p.m. smelling like solder and coffee, and she'd ask how the meeting was, and I'd lie and say it was helpful, that sharing with other parents made me feel less alone. The guilt ate at me, but I couldn't tell her what I was really doing. Not until I knew it would work. Not until I had something real to show her. Dennis and I built 17 prototypes. The first ones were disasters, just random buzzing that conveyed no meaningful information. Version 8 showed promise. We could distinguish between bass and treble. Version 12 could separate 3 instruments. Version 15 could map an entire song with enough detail that when I wore it with my eyes closed, I could follow the melody through touch alone. It was extraordinary and terrifying, this feeling of music moving across my chest and back in waves and pulses and rhythms, and I'd stand there in the lab at midnight crying because Liam was going to be able to experience this, was going to get music back. Then, version 15 caught fire during testing. Literally caught fire, started smoking from a motor that overheated, and I ripped it off my chest and watched 6 months of work burn in a metal trash can while the smoke alarm screamed. Dennis stood there with a fire extinguisher looking shaken, and I stood there watching smoke curl toward the ceiling thinking this was over. I'd failed. There was no time to start again.
I tricked my friends into thinking I was moving to North Dakota. I was 3 months from graduation when my roommate decided my entire future for me. We were at dinner and she goes, "I put the deposit down for our apartment next year. Your share is $800. I stopped eating. "What apartment?" She laughed like I was being stupid. "The one we talked about. 4 bedrooms on just off the main street. I already signed the lease. Except we never actually talked about it. She decided in a group chat and just assumed I'd pay. Then my boyfriend decided to jump in. Perfect timing. I just accepted a job here in the city, so we're both staying. He said we're like it was already decided. I tried to speak, but my roommate kept talking about move-in dates and furniture. Nobody asked me what I wanted. They'd planned my whole life and didn't ask me once what my actual plans were. So I decided to mess with them. Out of love, of course. So the next week at lunch, I said I'd been looking at jobs in other cities. My boyfriend laughed. "You're not serious." I looked right at him. "There's a really good offer in Fargo." Everyone went quiet. My roommate put her fork down. "Fargo? Like North Dakota?" I nodded. "The rent is $600 for a really nice place." My boyfriend's smile disappeared. "Babe, stop joking around." But I wasn't joking. Well, not to them anyway. Over the next few days, I started dropping details to make it worse. I told my roommate I'd been researching winter coats because it gets to negative 30 degrees there. She looked terrified. I showed everyone apartments I'd supposedly saved online. My boyfriend kept giving me these looks like he was waiting for me to admit I was kidding. Then one night he pulled me aside. "If you move out of state, this doesn't work." He meant us. He meant our relationship was over if I left. I looked at him and said, "Okay then." His face went blank. "Okay, what?" I grabbed my coat. "Okay, we're done." He started saying I was making a huge mistake and that I wasn't thinking straight, but I was thinking clearly for the first time in months. It felt refreshing to be honest, so I just left him standing there and went home. Here's the thing though. I didn't tell anyone we broke up. I wanted to see how crazy everyone would get about Fargo, and they were already going crazy. I could tell my roommate was scheming behind my back because of how shifty they were becoming whenever they were on the phone. They were planning something. So I went harder on the Fargo story. I joined Facebook groups for people moving to North Dakota. I got price quotes from moving companies. I bought this huge winter jacket and wore it everywhere even though it was warm outside. When people asked why, I'd say I was breaking it in for Fargo. I'm not sure you even break in winter jackets. My roommate looked like she might cry every time. Then 2 weeks before graduation, the ambush came. I walked into my roommate's place and the whole friend group was there. Someone had made a slide deck presentation. It was called Why Fargo is a Mistake. They had slides about the weather and how far away it was from everyone. My roommate stood up at the end. "We don't want you to do something you'll regret. You belong here with us." She looked at my ex-boyfriend. "With people who care about you." I let them finish. I was holding back my laughs at this point. Then I said, "I'm not moving to Fargo." There was a group sigh of relief. Thank God. I knew you'd realize it was a bad idea. I shook my head. No, I'm moving to New York. I accepted a job there 6 weeks ago. The whole room went silent. You could hear someone's phone buzz and nothing else. 6 weeks? My roommate whispered. She looked confused. "But what about the apartment? What about your boyfriend?" I kept my voice calm. "We broke up 3 weeks ago. He told me if I took a job out of state, he'd leave me. So I picked the job." My ex-boyfriend's face turned red. Everyone was staring at us. "You've been broken up for 3 weeks?" My roommate asked. I picked up my bag. "I tried to tell you I was looking at other places. You signed a lease with my name on it and he gave me an ultimatum. Nobody asked what I wanted. quiet. Then my ex stood up. You know what? I didn't actually accept that job here. Everyone turned to look at him. I got an offer in Boston and I took it last week. My roommate's eyes widened in shock. Wait, so neither of you are staying? He shrugged. I was gonna tell everyone at graduation. She looked at me. I can't afford that apartment with 3 people. The deposit is gone. Then she said it. I already spent your $800 on furniture. I stopped walking. What? Her voice cracked. I thought you'd pay me back, so I bought the couch already. My ex started laughing. Not a normal laugh. A wrong one. You're both psychotic. My roommate was crying for real now. Not fake Fargo tears, so I just walked out. 3 days later, she Venmo requested me $800. The note said, "You owe me." I blocked her.
Lawyers of Reddit, what was your gotcha moment in court? I've been a divorce attorney for over 20 years, but there's one case that still felt like something out of a TV show. I was representing a father in a brutal custody case during a messy divorce, with 2 young kids stuck in the middle and emotions running high on both sides. The mother had accused the father of horrific child abuse, the kind that makes your skin crawl, and the worst part was that the kids backed her up. Under oath, both children gave graphic and detailed depositions about things their dad had supposedly done, and when I read the transcripts, they were so vivid and believable that it was hard not to feel sick just reading them. It looked like a done deal. As much as it pained me to admit it later, I genuinely thought I was defending a monster. But then I noticed something. Right at the very end of one of the transcripts, there was a strange little question from one of the kids. Did I hit my marks? And that stopped me cold. Before becoming a lawyer, I had actually spent a few years in LA trying to make it as an actor. It never went anywhere, but I picked up the lingo, and that phrase, "did I hit my marks?" was acting terminology. It referred to whether you stood in the right spot for the camera or the stage. It wasn't something most adults even knew, let alone a kid in the middle of a custody hearing. Unless, of course, that kid had been around actors or had been coached. That's when I started digging. During discovery, I subpoenaed the mother's personal bank records. At first glance, nothing stood out, but then I noticed a series of payments to a name I didn't recognize. So I looked it up. It was an acting coach. That alone wasn't proof of anything. Maybe the kids were just in a drama program or school play. Could have been a coincidence, but something about it didn't sit right. So I pushed harder and requested a deposition with the coach. That's when everything fell apart. At first, the coach was calm and professional, saying the kids were sweet and imaginative. But as I kept pressing, the answers got vaguer and the coach got nervous. Eventually, under enough pressure, they cracked. The coach admitted they had been specifically hired by the mother, not to help the kids with theater, but to rehearse scripted depositions that made the father sound abusive. They were given sample questions and detailed answers to practice. They even trained to cry on cue. And then it got worse. The coach still had video evidence. During the deposition, they handed over DVDs. There were hours of footage showing the mother sitting with her kids, coaching them on what to say and how to say it. At one point, she even stops her son mid-sentence and says, No. Remember, he did it in the garage, not the bedroom. She praised them when they got the lines right, as if they were rehearsing for an actual role on TV. But in reality, it was to paint their father as a monster. It was devastating. I handed the footage over to the judge, and the trial didn't last much longer after that. The judge ruled in favor of the father and gave him full custody. The mother lost all parental rights and was told any future contact would be supervised, pending a criminal investigation. I still remember the judge's face while watching the first minute of that video. It was the only time I'd ever seen a courtroom go completely still. I've had a lot of wins in my career, but that one is the one that stuck.